China has accepted Saudi Arabia's offer. But what does this mean for the world? Is this a game-changing alliance that will reshape global power? Could it signal the end of Western dominance in the Middle East? Or does it conceal something even more significant? Global power is shifting. China and Saudi Arabia have just made a bold move. What are the implications? Stay tuned as we uncover the truth and explore the shocking consequences. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest world developments. The offer. What did Saudi Arabia propose? Saudi Arabia, the enigmatic desert kingdom, has long been a master of strategic maneuvering, a pivotal player in the intricate dance of international relations. However, its latest move goes beyond mere diplomacy. It's a bold gambit, a potential declaration of a new era. The kingdom has reportedly extended an offer to China, a rising global superpower, that could fundamentally redefine diplomatic and economic relations, not just in the volatile Middle East, but across the entire world. But what exactly was on the table? What did Saudi Arabia propose that compelled China to accept, potentially jeopardizing decades of established alliances and norms? According to initial reports, gathered from diplomatic sources and insiders, Saudi Arabia proposed a deep and comprehensive partnership across multiple critical sectors: energy, trade, and defense. At the heart of this offer lies a game-changing prospect: China gaining greater, potentially preferential access to Saudi Arabia's vast crude oil reserves. This is a development of monumental significance. Saudi Arabia isn't just another oil producer. It holds the title of the world's largest crude oil exporter, wielding immense influence over global energy prices and supply. China, on the other hand, is an insatiable giant, the world's biggest consumer of energy resources, with an economy that relentlessly demands more fuel. By establishing and securing direct long-term supply lines from Saudi Arabia, China can significantly reduce its dependence on Western-controlled markets and the volatility they often bring. This move could effectively shield China from geopolitical pressures and strengthen its economic resilience against external shocks. Imagine the sheer power this gives Beijing, a guaranteed, uninterrupted flow of the lifeblood of its economy, independent of traditional Western influence. But the offer doesn't stop at oil. Saudi Arabia has also reportedly hinted at a major expansion of military ties with China. This could take multiple forms, including lucrative arms deals, with China potentially emerging as a key supplier of advanced weaponry to the kingdom. Joint defense projects could also be in the works, signaling an unprecedented level of military collaboration. If this aspect of the deal fully materializes, it could mark a seismic shift away from decades of U.S. military dominance in the Middle East. For years, the U.S. has been Saudi Arabia's primary security guarantor. Could this new alignment signal a fundamental change in Riyadh's strategic calculations? A move toward a new protector? The implications for regional security are profound, potentially sparking an arms race and further destabilizing an already fragile region. To understand the gravity of this shift, it's important to consider the historical context. For decades, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia have maintained a complex but ultimately stable relationship, built on a foundation of oil for security. The U.S. provided a security umbrella, ensuring the kingdom's stability, while Saudi Arabia, in turn, guaranteed a steady supply of oil to global markets, often priced in U.S. dollars. Despite occasional tensions, this arrangement has been a cornerstone of the global order. However, Saudi Arabia's willingness to pursue a deeper partnership with China signals growing disillusionment. The kingdom may feel that its traditional alliance with the U.S. no longer serves its long-term strategic interests in an increasingly volatile world. Perhaps Riyadh perceives a weakening U.S. commitment to the region, or it sees an opportunity to leverage China's rise to further its own goals, particularly its ambitious Vision 2030 initiative aimed at economic diversification. This raises critical questions. Why did China, a nation typically cautious in its foreign policy, so readily accept such a transformative offer? More importantly, what are the immediate and long-term consequences of this decision? The answers could redefine global power dynamics in the 21st century. China's strategic response: a calculated move. For China, accepting Saudi Arabia's offer was far from a spontaneous decision. It was a meticulously calculated step in Beijing's long-term strategy to expand its global influence and reshape the international order in its favor. For years, China has been laying the groundwork for this moment, particularly in the Middle East. a region of immense strategic importance due to its vast energy resources and critical geographical position connecting Asia, Africa, and Europe. As the U.S. increasingly shifts its strategic focus toward the Indo-Pacific to counter China's growing influence there, Beijing has seized the opportunity to fill the perceived power vacuum in the Middle East. Strengthening ties with Saudi Arabia marks a monumental achievement in this effort, allowing China to secure critical economic, energy, and security advantages with far-reaching consequences. China has been strategically laying the groundwork for this moment, particularly in the Middle East, a region of immense importance due to its vast energy resources and critical geographic position, connecting Asia, Africa, and Europe. As the United States increasingly shifts its strategic focus toward the Indo-Pacific to counter China's growing assertiveness, Beijing has seized the opportunity to expand its influence in the Middle East. Strengthening ties with Saudi Arabia represents a monumental achievement in this effort. This alliance allows China to accomplish several key strategic objectives, each with potentially far-reaching consequences. The most immediate priority is energy security. China's economic growth is deeply tied to its energy consumption, requiring a massive daily influx of crude oil to sustain its industries and growing middle class. Saudi Arabia plays a crucial role in this equation, supplying nearly 1.8 million barrels of oil per day to China, making it one of, if not the top, oil providers. Strengthening this partnership ensures a more stable and predictable energy supply, reducing China's dependence on potentially unreliable or politically volatile sources. This enhanced energy security fortifies China's economic expansion while insulating it from market fluctuations and geopolitical pressures that could disrupt its supply. For Beijing, securing a steady flow of oil from the world's largest exporter brings unparalleled peace of mind. Beyond energy, this partnership opens immense opportunities for economic expansion. China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, BR1, a massive infrastructure and investment project spanning continents, has already made significant inroads in the Middle East. A deeper collaboration with Saudi Arabia, a country with vast financial resources and ambitious Vision 2030 development plans, unlocks a wealth of investment opportunities for Chinese companies. Key sectors such as construction, high-speed rail, telecommunications, technology, and logistics are primed for Chinese involvement, further embedding China's economic influence in the region. This not only secures lucrative contracts for Chinese firms, but also deepens China's economic influence in a strategically vital region. The Belt and Road Initiative, BR1, already a powerful tool for expanding China's global reach, receives a significant boost through this alliance, potentially reshaping trade routes and economic dependencies across the Middle East and beyond. Thirdly, the potential for an increased Chinese military presence in the Gulf carries immense strategic significance. While details remain speculative, a stronger defense collaboration with Saudi Arabia could, in the long run, allow China to establish military facilities, or at least gain preferential access to existing ones in the region. This would pose a direct challenge to the long-standing U.S. military dominance in the Gulf, potentially shifting the balance of power and expanding China's influence in an area where it has historically maintained a limited military footprint. Even a modest Chinese naval presence in the Gulf could have profound implications for maritime security, global trade routes, and the overall geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. Imagine the alarm bells ringing in Washington at the prospect of Chinese warships patrolling waters long dominated by the U.S. Navy. Finally, and perhaps most controversially, is the potential shift toward de-dollarization. China and Saudi Arabia have been engaged in discussions about conducting oil transactions in Chinese yuan instead of U.S. dollars. By accepting Saudi Arabia's offer, China could secure a commitment from Riyadh to move toward yuan-denominated oil sales, at least for exports to China. Such a move would deliver a direct and significant blow to the petrodollar system, which has underpinned U.S. economic dominance for nearly half a century. If Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter, begins pricing its oil in yuan for its largest customer, it could inspire other oil-producing nations to follow suit, gradually reducing global reliance on the U.S. dollar for energy trade. This shift could have far-reaching consequences for the dollar's value, U.S. economic influence, and the global financial system as a whole, striking at the very core of American economic power. China's acceptance of Saudi Arabia's offer is undeniably a calculated power move, a multifaceted strategic decision with the potential to reshape the global landscape. But as China's influence rises, the critical question remains: what does this mean for the rest of the world, particularly for the established Western powers? The U.S. and Western reaction, a brewing conflict. For decades, the United States has viewed Saudi Arabia as a cornerstone of its Middle East strategy, a key partner in maintaining regional stability and ensuring the free flow of oil. However, this relationship has grown increasingly strained in recent years due to mounting tensions over human rights concerns, disagreements on oil production policies, and a perceived shift in security commitments. Now, with China stepping boldly into the equation, directly challenging decades of U.S. influence, Washington is unlikely to remain passive. A response is brewing, and the nature and intensity of that response could shape the future balance of global power. Economic pressure, the first line of defense. One of the most probable U.S. responses will be economic pressure. Washington wields a formidable array of financial tools and may not hesitate to use them in an effort to dissuade Saudi Arabia from deepening its alliance with China. Potential measures could include targeted sanctions on key Saudi individuals or entities involved in the deal, as well as broader restrictions on Saudi investments in sensitive American industries. Additionally, the U.S. could leverage its significant influence within international financial institutions to apply further pressure on Riyadh. However, the effectiveness of such tactics is uncertain. With its vast oil wealth and its newfound partnership with China, Saudi Arabia may prove more resilient to economic coercion than in the past. The risk for the U.S. is that aggressive economic measures could backfire, alienating Saudi Arabia further and driving it even closer to China's embrace. Diplomatic maneuvers, pulling Saudi Arabia back into the fold. Alongside economic pressure, diplomatic efforts will likely intensify. The U.S. is expected to launch a full-scale lobbying campaign, engaging in high-level diplomatic talks aimed at keeping Saudi Arabia within the Western sphere of influence. Expect visits from top U.S. officials, persuasive arguments emphasizing the long-standing benefits of the U.S.-Saudi relationship, and possibly even new security guarantees or economic incentives to sway Riyadh. However, in an era where China's economic and political influence is expanding rapidly, these efforts may face greater challenges than ever before. Saudi Arabia now has options, and it knows it. The U.S. will likely emphasize the potential risks for Saudi Arabia in aligning too closely with China, including concerns about long-term strategic dependence and potential conflicts of interest. However, in a world where China's economic and political influence is rapidly expanding, these diplomatic efforts may face greater challenges than in previous decades. Saudi Arabia now has options, and it knows it. Perhaps the most concerning potential U.S. response is a strengthened military presence in the Gulf. Faced with growing Chinese military influence in a region it has long dominated, the U.S. might respond by increasing troop deployments, conducting larger and more frequent military exercises with regional allies, and boosting arms sales to nations wary of China's expanding footprint. This escalation could heighten the risk of miscalculation and accidental conflict in an already volatile region. In addition to military measures, the U.S. may counterbalance China's influence by reinforcing alliances with regional partners such as Israel and certain Gulf states that are skeptical of Beijing's growing presence. Meanwhile, Europe is closely watching these developments with mounting concern. The European Union, which relies heavily on Middle Eastern energy imports, fears that a stronger China-Saudi alliance could lead to trade disruptions and higher energy prices. As a result, EU nations may find themselves caught between economic ties with China and security commitments to the U.S., with differing national approaches further complicating the Western response. Could these rising tensions escalate into an economic war between superpowers? The possibility is real. If the U.S. and China engage in retaliatory economic measures, such as tariffs, sanctions, and trade restrictions, the global economy could suffer severe consequences. Supply chains may be disrupted, inflation could rise, and worldwide economic growth could stall. Saudi Arabia, caught in the middle, would face intense pressure to choose a side, a decision with profound economic implications for the kingdom. The crucial question remains: can Saudi Arabia, even with its deepening alliance with China, withstand the full force of U.S. economic pressure? If Washington perceives its core interests as threatened, the answer to how it will respond remains a critical uncertainty. The reaction from the U.S. and its Western allies will play a pivotal role in shaping the future trajectory of this alliance. Will they engage with strategic diplomacy and a nuanced understanding of the shifting global landscape? Or will they take a more confrontational approach, escalating tensions and potentially destabilizing the region? As this geopolitical drama unfolds, the world watches with bated breath. The global impact, a new world order. This burgeoning alliance between China and Saudi Arabia extends far beyond their bilateral relationship. Its implications ripple across the globe, potentially reshaping the very structure of the international order and ushering in a new era of geopolitical transformation. This isn't just about two powerful nations forging closer ties. It signals a possible paradigm shift in global power dynamics. One of the most significant global consequences could be a major realignment in the Middle East. Strengthened ties between China and Saudi Arabia may embolden other nations in the region seeking to diversify their alliances beyond the traditional Western sphere of influence. Countries like Iran, which already maintains a strategic partnership with China, as well as Russia and Turkey, both of which have pursued independent foreign policies, might see this as an opportunity to align more closely with a powerful bloc that offers an alternative to Western dominance. This could lead to the emergence of a new coalition in the Middle East, challenging the existing regional order and introducing new security dynamics. Imagine a scenario where a substantial portion of the Middle East shifts its alignment toward Beijing and Moscow rather than Washington. The consequences for U.S. influence and regional stability would be profound. Another key global impact is the potential acceleration of de-dollarization. If Saudi Arabia, the world's leading oil exporter, begins conducting a significant portion of its oil trade in Chinese yuan, it could inspire other oil-producing nations, particularly those with strained relations with the U.S., to follow suit. This could trigger a snowball effect, gradually diminishing global reliance on the U.S. dollar as the primary currency for international trade, especially in the energy sector. The erosion of the petrodollar system could have profound consequences for the U.S. economy, potentially leading to a decline in the dollar's value and its status as the world's reserve currency. This, in turn, could impact U.S. borrowing costs, weaken its ability to project economic power globally, and disrupt the overall stability of the international financial system. The ripple effects would be felt worldwide. The Middle East, already a region marked by conflict and instability, could become a new battleground for economic and political supremacy, with China and the U.S. vying for control and influence. This competition could manifest in various forms, from economic investments and trade agreements to diplomatic maneuvering and even proxy conflicts. Both powers will likely seek to strengthen alliances with regional players, potentially escalating tensions and creating new geopolitical fault lines. The struggle for dominance in this strategically vital region could have far-reaching implications for global peace and security. Imagine the Middle East becoming the epicenter of a new Cold War, with the U.S. and China backing opposing sides in regional disputes. On the other hand, this alliance could open new economic opportunities, particularly for nations involved in China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. As China's presence in the Middle East grows, countries along BRI routes could benefit from increased trade, infrastructure development, and financial backing from Beijing. This could lead to new economic partnerships and a shift in global trade flows, potentially establishing new centers of economic growth and influence beyond the traditional Western sphere. Nations aligned with the BRI may find themselves in an increasingly advantageous position within this evolving global landscape. Ultimately, the strengthening of the China-Saudi Arabia alliance could mark a significant step toward a multipolar world order, one in which the U.S. no longer holds the absolute dominance it has enjoyed for decades. In a multipolar world, power is distributed among several major global players, creating a more complex and potentially less predictable international landscape. While some argue that this could lead to greater balance and reduced unilateralism, it also raises the risk of increased competition, heightened tensions, and a greater likelihood of conflict as rival power centers vie for influence. The implications for global governance, international institutions, and the ability to address global challenges, such as climate change and pandemics, remain uncertain in this shifting world order. This isn't just a regional development. It's a potential turning point in global history, signaling a fundamental shift in the balance of power and ushering in a new era of international relations. China's acceptance of Saudi Arabia's offer isn't just a deal, it's a statement. a statement that global alliances are shifting, new power centers are emerging, and the world as we know it is changing. What happens next depends on how the US and its allies respond. Will they counter this move with strategic diplomacy, economic retaliation, or military posturing? And how will other nations position themselves in this growing divide? One thing is certain: the world is entering a new era of competition, alliances, and power struggles. What do you think? Is this the beginning of China's dominance in the Middle East? Or will Saudi Arabia continue to balance its ties between East and West? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest global developments. Until next time, stay tuned for more insights on world affairs.